Minister of Tourism and International Transport, the Honorable Ian Gooden-Edgell. Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, Ms. Francine Blackman. Special Envoy to the Prime Minister on Investment and Financial Services, Professor Avinash Prasad. Chief Executive Officer of the Grantley Adams International Airport, Mr. Hadley Bourne. Members of the Board of GAIA Inc., distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen both here and online, good evening. I am Charlene Brown, Corporate Communications Specialist at GAIA Inc., and I want to thank you all for joining us to discuss the matter of the investment and development of the Grantley Adams International Airport. We value open communication and transparency, and this town hall facilitates that. We will hear from our panel this afternoon, who will provide comprehensive background and insight into the arrangement. Our first speaker will be the Honorable Minister Ian Gooden-Edgell.
Thank you and good afternoon, Charlene, thank you. Good evening, everybody present and those online. Let me first of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, extend our thanks to you for attending this town hall meeting. We felt it necessary that such a major transaction and our discussion we should engage the public, and therefore we're here to do so. Before I proceed, let me just also remind you that Professor Avinash Prasad will be giving us details regarding the proposed transaction. But I should first of all let you know that this is one of several we've had. We met with the unions. We met separately with the National Union of Public Workers. I believe that meeting was held in June. We also met with Unity Workers Union, and we met with the Barbados Workers Union. We also had a meeting with the operators and concessionaires at the Grantley Adams International Airport, where we outline pretty much what we will outline today to those persons. All sessions, I may add, based on the invitees, were pretty much heavily subscribed, and we therefore want to say thanks to the unions and the concessionaires who attended those sessions. Management also had meetings with their staff members at the Grantley Adams International Airport, pretty much to keep them informed and to keep them in the loop. And obviously, they are continuing those engagements with the staff because those engagements are critical. Today, before I hand over to Professor Avinash Prasad, I would like to make it clear, as I've indicated it before, the Grantley Adams International Airport is not for sale and will not be sold. That's the first point we need to make. There are no attachments whatsoever to the real estate of the Grantley Adams International Airport. We have no lien on the assets of the Grantley Adams International Airport. And I just thought I should make that very clear up front. There's no plan as well to attach or to assign any of the real estate at the Grantley Adams International Airport to any person who will come forward and invest with us, and that's very clear. The real estate will continue to be vested in the people of Barbados through the government of Barbados, and more specifically through the Grantley Adams International Airport. And I felt it was necessary to square that governance issue and put it in its proper context so that we understand that there's no change to the real estate proposition at the Grantley Adams International Airport. The other area of concern is that we will still have a board known as Grantley Adams International Airport, Inc., who will continue to oversee the operations. The investor who's coming in and will make a substantial investment, it will benefit the airport, as you will hear today, in the most fundamental way. As I travel and we're promoting Barbados and we're getting increased airlift into Barbados, it is absolutely necessary that we do what we have to do in order to improve the operations at the Grantley Adams International Airport, as well as to build out the capital asset that we own at the Grantley Adams International Airport. The investment, as you will hear very shortly from Professor Avinash Prasad, will certainly help us to achieve the objectives. And there's no doubt in my mind, as I travel, we are drumming up additional airlift to Barbados, and I think we all can recognize what is happening there, especially operators at the airport can see firsthand. We're not back to the 2019 levels yet, but we're almost there. But beyond that, the infrastructure we need, if we are going to expand operations at the airport, is also an opportunity for the workers. It's an opportunity for the concessionaires at the international airport, and certainly there's an opportunity for the investor as well as the government of Barbados. The structure of the deal, as it's presented, is not unique to Barbados. Certainly in other islands within the Caribbean as well, they have PPP arrangements. And if I were still in private sector, and somebody had come and offer to invest $300 million in a proposition, and the returns are as good, and they will have no whole attachment or lien on the real estate, then I would say that's good going. But that's from a perspective, if I were elsewhere and this transaction were before me, I would of course support it and give it the same measure of decisiveness that it ought to be dealt with. So I just thought I'll put that squarely on the table to let everybody know that, because I know that's a major sticking point. The second major issue is that the government will protect and at all times maintain its sovereignty. And by that I mean the government of Barbados will continue to maintain border control at the Grand Leams International Airport. In simple words, they will continue to exercise the functions of the police service. There's no change, nobody controls that, no investor controls that. In respect of customs and migration, those remain squarely within the sovereignty of Barbados. Port Health as well, all other subsidiary and our statutory entities that help us to function and execute our responsibilities as a border security, border control agency. That is not up for discussion. It was never part of the transaction. It was never discussed. And for those of you who may have some knowledge in operations of a PPP, you all know that border security does not fall within the ambit of any transaction as it relates to a PPP. Those sovereign matters remain squarely within the realm of the government of Barbados. So I will pause here. I don't want to keep you unduly, but I thought it was appropriate to set out just a broad framework. And we have joining us Professor Avinash Prasad, who will also be engaging us this afternoon. Suffice to say as well, before he comes to the microphone, that the government of Barbados and the cabinet approved this, had a negotiating team. And that negotiating team comprises, we refer to as a college of negotiators. And certainly I've had the benefit of working with a college of negotiators in another ministry when I was at Ministry of Transport Works and Water Resources. And I can tell you that based on the work that I've seen and witnessed the college engaged in, including experts that we have retained from off-island, I can assure you that I have utmost confidence and faith in the negotiating team and the mandate that they have received. And therefore, as always, matters will come to the attention of the ministry because the GAIA Inc. is still a statutory entity falling squarely under this ministry, for which, obviously, in terms of governance, you have a permanent secretary who remains the accounting officer in the ministry, and you have a board reporting up to us. So I'll pause there, and I'll invite Professor Avinash Prasad to take us through the transaction. Of course, there are other members of the head table who will have a say, and of course, we will take your questions and we will respond to you, and I promise you very sincerely, very faithfully, and anything that we can't answer, of course, we will let you know we don't have the answer. But I will conclude on this note as well, that we have signed off on a heads of terms agreement, and we have also entering discussions on the concessionaires agreement. Those negotiations haven't been concluded, and negotiations, the transaction can go either way, and that's a fact. Obviously, we want it to go our way, and obviously, we will have to be tough, and Avi does what he does best in terms of negotiating for us. But I just thought I'll put those few key points on the table. Professor Prasad.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Avinash Prasad. Those of you who know me will know I'm a very informal person, so please call me Avi or Avinash in our discussion to come later. As the Minister said, we've had a number of meetings with different stakeholder groups. I'm seeing a few people who've been here before, perhaps checking whether I'm giving you the same story. So it's great that you're here. But of course, a key stakeholder is the public of Barbados. We all use the airport. We're dependent on the airport. We will, hopefully use it and be dependent on it in the future. So we're all stakeholders in the airport. So it's important that you're here, that we have a discussion, and we try to explain things as much as we can. We may not, as the Minister said, know all the answers. Life is uncertain, but we can tell you as much as we know. May have to come back to you on some things, but let's do that. What I aim to do is talk for about maybe 12 minutes or so, giving you the background of why we're here, what is the problem we were trying to solve, and then invite you to ask your questions. I'm no doubt going to forget a few things, so those questions would be useful, and there may be some clarifications too. So picture yourself back in 2018. The government comes and has a chat with the management, looking at the airport and reviewing where the airport is, and it's quite clear that given the tough economic conditions that Barbados had experienced, that the airport was suffering from significant underinvestment over a long period of time. Indeed, there was some emergency things, because as you may, I'm sure you're all aware, airports are subject to substantial international regulation. Airlines won't land in our airport unless we have certain international certifications. And so we knew we had to invest early and quickly in the runway, in the apron, about $40 million, and that was done. But it was also clear from that process that much more investment was required. I think we've all of us who've used the airport have known over the years various things, being the departure lounge being open to the elements in a world of increasing extreme climatic events, not just the ashfall or Hurricane Elsa. The whole issue of passenger air bridges, of the cross flow of people. When sometimes you've landed and you're coming into the airport, you have to pause because some people are going in another direction. There are a whole range of things for which we needed in order to maintain the highest kinds of certifications. So we have the largest airlines and aircraft landing substantial investment, a minimum of some $250 million. $250 million. Now, 2018, the country is on the brink. We have one of the highest levels of debt of any country in the world, the third highest in the world. We're third only back in 2018 to Japan and Greece, both of which are very different than our country. So we had no ability to put $300 million of additional debt onto the government. In addition to that, as the Minister rightly says, we don't want to sell the airport. So there are two ways of getting money. One is someone buys the airport and owns the airport and then invests in the thing it owns, or you borrow money and you add debt. So that was a problem we had to try and solve. How do we get $250 million of investment without more debt and without selling the airport? And this is not a unique problem. So there are, as you know, 1,000 airports around the world of similar or larger size than Grantley Adams. And the model, the best practice that had evolved over the years is something called a concessionaire model. Under the concessionaire model, someone comes in, invests a lot of money. In our case, it would have been a minimum of $250 million. And in return, it's no debt for us. We haven't sold the airport. We give them a share of future revenues. So they invest, and the way they get paid back for their investment is they take a share of future revenues. And the size of that share will depend on how big is the airport, how much revenues do you have, how much investment is needed, how much work needs to be done. And of course, because they're getting a share of the revenues, they want to look after their investment. They come in and bring expert operational teams who come in. And so that is a concessionaire model. And that's what allows us to get the investment without the debt, without selling the airport. Not a unique model, as the minister said, being tried in a number of places. So we hired one of the experts in managing concessionaire agreements called the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank. We're a member of the World Bank. This is the International Development Bank, and they have a private sector arm that manages these kinds of things. So we hired the IFC, and they began speaking to international airport operators who do concessionaire agreements. And there are around 12 or 13 who are interested. And the IFC tells us that indicatively, the amount of revenues we will have to give up for the $250 million of investment is 75%. So we get 25, they get 75%. They'd invest the 300 million. They would help to manage the airport for a length of time, 25 years, 30 years. That's the normal practice. 25% for us, 75% for them. It's within the range of these things, given the size of our airport and the investment. It's at the lower end of the range, or it's in the range. It's in the range. They can go as low as 15% and go as high as around 40 or 50. So that is what we were thinking about. And then COVID struck. As you know, passengers collapsed almost to zero. And the IFC came back to us and said, well, now we can't do a 25-75 deal. It's looking more like 11 to 15% for you and 85 to 89% for them to invest in this $250 million in this uncertain environment. And we say, well, if that's because of COVID, maybe we could wait, because we didn't think COVID was going to be long-lasting. Back then, it seems obvious now, but back then people said they didn't know how long it would take before passengers start coming back. So they were pretty adamant on this new number of 15% for us, 85% for them. And so we then said, okay, but can we get additional things? Can we get maybe an airport hotel in the deal? Could we get more airlift in the deal? Could we get more investment in cargo? We want to be a hub for cargo. Can we get pre-clearance with the United States so that passengers wouldn't have to go through US customs when they arrive there? They go through here, make it so much easier. You can fly in domestically to the States. And we speak to these operators, and they say, we understand why you want this. Those will be good things, but we don't do them. You need expert hoteliers or expert cargo people or expert pre-clearance people. That's not us. So there we are, a little bit stumped. And then we have a state-to-state meeting in the United Arab Emirates. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the United Arab Emirates. There are about 7 emirates. And one emirate that is closest to us in many ways is Dubai. Dubai is one of the emirates that never had a lot of oil or gas. And it forced them to invest in tourism. That's why, and transport logistics. You might have heard of Dubai Ports. Dubai Ports is one of the world's largest port operators. Dubai International Airport. When I was born, Dubai International Airport, Dubai was a nothing place as an international airport. Today, it's one of the greatest hubs, one of the largest international airports. And so they're investing in that because they didn't have oil and gas. So we are there, and they say to us, we'd quite like to do a concessionaire agreement with your airport. And we say to them, well, you should have told us that earlier, because we're already in a process with the IFC. And they begin to say, but we can do a lot more. We can have a state-to-state relationship. We can facilitate you meeting Dubai International Airports, you meeting Emirates and having more airlift. We can facilitate you meeting some of our big hotel brands, One and Only, Six Senses, and these other things operating in Dubai. We are global in cargo. And so we're thinking, well, do we want to give up this potential for the public of Barbados because of timing? So we say to them, well, if you can offer us something substantially different, on a different basis, on a partnership basis, not like a commercial operator basis, but a partnership basis, better share of revenues, facilitate cargo, pre-clearance, hotels, then we would consider. So we sat down and we created a negotiating committee, which I chaired, and we have some of the members here, some of the senior management at the airport, some of the members of the board, and then advisors of airports and finance and other things. And we got a very different, markedly better arrangement. So under this new arrangement, we don't get 15%, we don't get 25%, we get 40%. And in the last 10 years of the agreement, we get 50%. Almost like a JV, 50-50. In addition to that, they're going to facilitate us to meet airports, to meet hotels, expansion of the airlift, and they're going to an integral part of the deal, make us a global cargo hub. As you know, we have ambitions that where we are located, between Africa and the Americas, we can be a global hub for cargo. The fastest growing region in the world today is Africa. This is the African century. We are well positioned. If you're traveling from Africa to Latin America, you have to go via New York, via Miami. Why not come to Barbados as a cargo hub? So that is what we have worked on. And that is what we have agreed on the heads of terms. So just to repeat that, they're going to invest not $250, but $300 million. They're going to get a share of revenues where we get 40, rising to 50 in the last 10 years. We get an investment in a global hub on cargo. We get them to help facilitate on airport hotels and other luxury hotels, because I think the capacity for an airport hotel is just one thing, it's limited. And of course, as the Minister said, this is about the airport operation. It's not about our border. We're not giving up anything on border control. It's very important that we maintain the local character of our airport. So we have no objection clause, no objectionability on the design of all this new investment, on maintaining the red caps, on maintaining the exposure for small businesses, small local businesses in Barbados. That's all part of our heads of agreement. Let me wrap up by coming down now to a critical area for us. So yes, finance is important. Investment is important, future cargo hub is important, but at the end of the day, what's key to development is people. And we're very keen on the workers who are at the airport, employed by the airport, employed within the airport grounds and other concessionaires. Hopefully, the plans are to expand the airport substantially, so there should be significant more people in the airport. But we want to make sure that there's no diminution of rights. And so what a key part of our agreement is there is no change in existing contracts, no reduction of terms and conditions, both in terms of concessionaires and in terms of workers. That there's also going to be a transition period, so we all get to sort of, to kick the tires and see what this process is. The transition period after we've finalized the contract will be about 8 months. And then after that 8 months, there's a further 12 months of a freeze of where things are, staying where they are as everyone is looking at the arrangement, and then the investment comes. So, finally, a key part of the enfranchisement. Now that we may be getting 40% of revenues, up from 15, up from 25, we want to give a share of that to the people who work at the airport. And so we want to work with the labor representatives on a share structure where they get a share of revenues. We want to work with them too. An expanded airport is going to lead to more businesses operating at the airport. And we want to encourage people to set up businesses that will get those contracts. So we've got a commitment from the new operators that they are going to work with small businesses and small firms to get those contracts, not just big firms. And so that probably requires training. To make sure they've got the certification and they've got the training, as well as training on finance as to how to manage your shares and your revenues. People will be getting shares that they've never had shares before. So all of that, we understand, requires training and understanding, and we and they are committed to that. So let me end there with a summary. We started on a particular route and ended up in a significantly better place. A better share of revenues, a higher investment, commitments on maintaining contracts, on expanding the airport, on critical new investments that if we don't do those investments, it's not like we have a choice of not doing those investments. If we don't do those investments, and you've seen some of the leaks and infrastructure cracks at the airport, we're going to start losing certification. Not today, but we will in the future unless we invest in that airport. It's our airport. It's an airport I think we're all proud of. I don't know, I get a joy whenever I arrive in that airport. It's a Barbados airport. We need to make it the best in the world. That requires money. It doesn't happen by willing it, by saying it. It requires money, $300 million. And we think we also have a plan that will have significant enfranchisement of existing workers and future workers, more people, more businesses, more activity, more revenues. That's the plan. Thank you very much.
Avi, perhaps you may want to touch briefly on the fact that we've negotiated a heads of terms agreement, and we're currently now in the negotiations for the concession agreement.
So the key aspect of the agreement that we have reached is really on the commercial terms, as the Minister said. So they call that a heads of terms agreement. What is the share of the revenue? What is the size of the investment? But we now need to go into some detail of a contract, and that's why we've enlisted some expert legal help, and some is here today. So for example, what happens if they don't invest the money in the time we want? What are the remedies? What are the implications? So those are the kind of things that you need a detailed contract that is not normally in the heads of terms. So we now enter a 3-month period of getting a detailed contract. After that 3-month period, we then have a final detailed contract. So we're not debating the main commercial terms. They've been agreed, but we're debating all the aspects of a watertight contract. You say you're going to invest $300 million? We need to see that money. We need to see that investment. We need to have a time frame. We need to know what happens if you don't do that. You've made these commitments. What happens if you don't fulfill them? So that requires a contract, binding contract. And I think I should say too that this firm, it's Dubai money. It's using expertise from around the world. There's Menzies on cargo, Agunza on passengers, but they're going to have to be and incorporate as a Barbados company, subject to Barbados laws, Barbados labor laws, Barbados labor rules, all of the NIS commitments, all of those things, all the severance pay, etc. They need to commit to all those. So we need to have contracts in place to make sure that's all the case.
Thank you very much, Avi. Permanent Secretary, would you like to have any open remarks? And then I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer of the Grantley Amsterdam International Airport, who's also been a part of the negotiating team, to say a few words. Yes?
Okay. Thank you, Minister, and good evening to all who are present. I would basically add to the discussion and also indicate that what we're also doing is not just to look at the airport and its environs, but also to look at what we're doing in aviation to make sure that the services that we provide in that area also equal the world class that we're trying to achieve with our airport. So that also requires an improvement in the skill levels. It also requires an improvement in the type of technology that we're using, and certainly the skills that are available to us. And while we are also looking at what type of investment we're doing with the airport, we're also simultaneously looking at the aviation sector. And we recently, in order to facilitate that, we recently had passed through Parliament legislation that sets up the Civil Aviation Authority, and for the first time in the history of Barbados, sets up for the first time that environment where the delivery of service is not done by the same institution as which regulation is being done, which was what obtained before. So now we have two different departments which require different sets of skills. So as the airport still continue to function, the services of air traffic control, the services of aeronautical information services, the services regarding the electronics and the servicing of that equipment remains with government. So that becomes part still of the services that we will continue to provide, as occurs right now, to the Grantley Adams International. And then on the regulation side, you will now have the Civil Aviation Authority being staffed with the level of competencies that would now be able to do the monitoring and supervision necessary of the Grantley Adams International Airport to make sure then that as we move towards getting the type of accreditation that we are looking for, that they are meeting those markers. So now you have that level of supervision and scrutiny that may not have transpired before, and hence you have this also happening from the legislative and regulatory environment on the aviation side to make sure then that the airport does all that is expected to do, and certainly that the assistance, the investment that we anticipate and hopeful for through this negotiations with the UAE, that they do bear fruit, and all of the ICAO rules that they are accustomed to operating under in Dubai, that those type of arrangements continue here in Barbados. So I would add that at this time to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Hadley Bourne.
Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. And if most of you are familiar with baseball, I'm coming in like the closer, and I've not really much more to say. But just continuing from what PS said, and as someone who's been in this industry for 25 years, which is a quarter of a century, I'm still a young guy. And what we've spoken about and the evolution of the civil aviation industry in the country, with the advent of the privatization and what PS has just spoken to as it relates to the transition of the Civil Aviation Authority, it lends us the opportunity to that status of Cat 1, where we've always heard about, and what most persons are not aware of, what comes with that Cat 1 status is the ability to expand on varying fronts. And also with the advent of pre-clearance that you were mentioning, Avia also opens up opportunities for the North American traffic. So there's a lot of possibilities and opportunities here for us as we embark on this parallel development of both investing in the infrastructure, preparing for the growth in aviation, and also the transition of the Civil Aviation Authority to one that puts us back where we were within the region 20, 30 years ago when we were the ones who dominated. So it is an opportune time. It is an interesting time for those of you and those of us in the industry, and I look forward to seeing this investment come to fruition.
Thank you. I think we should pause and obviously open up the floor for some questions, and we'd be delighted to answer your questions. Let me just make it clear. I have nothing to hide. The team sitting at this table, they have nothing to hide. So we will answer your questions, and like I indicated before, if there are any questions we can answer, we will tell you up front. But that's from the governance perspective where we want to have this dialogue. So over to you.
Thank you, Minister. At this time, we will invite you to come to the microphone to ask your questions. When you do step up, please identify yourself and go ahead with your question.
Good evening to everybody. The opening batsman here now, huh? Well, I'm glad that you started the meeting at this time, and I hope that any other meetings would be done to accommodate older persons like myself, because driving home at night, late at night, could be a problem, you know, with all the lights that we're having, bright lights, and the aging having a dodge boat. So meetings that would start about 6 would suit me pretty well, you know. But this thing called a PPP, that's the partnership that we're going into, right? Right. And I heard about shares being offered to the staff members up there. Would this be extended to the general public in this new public-private partnership? I hear it being given to the staff members. So would this go further? Because, you know, we're deleting the average person from investing in companies and all that sort of thing. So I just want to get some clarity on that. One other thing that may go adrift from what you were discussing here a little bit. When last I checked, Barbados is the only island in the Caribbean that has a single airport. All the other islands in the Caribbean have at least 2, some even 3 airports. God forbid something happens here at this airport here. I know there's been much talk many years ago about a second airport somewhere in St. Lucie. That hasn't come to fruition yet. We're still dependent on GAIA, this airport up here. And recently we had some sort of electrical thing happening there and had to stall planes and all that sort of thing. We haven't got a second airport. And the smallest Caribbean island got at least 2 when last I checked. Some got 3. Do we look at, or should we look at, having another airport? I mean, we put a lot of money into this one, but what's the rationale for doing this one so big? And when it breaks down, no planes can come in any other place. How can we look at balancing this whole system and getting us at least a second airport?
Sorry, before you answer, sir, could you give your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Leroy Straker.
Thank you.
All right, Avinash, Professor Prasad will respond, and I'll also ask Hadley to discuss the whole issue of a second airport. But just to forewarn you that the airport is not a cheap proposition, but the technical team, especially with the skill set Hadley has, I'm sure he'll be able to go into detail. But what I can tell you is that we have Grant Williams International Airport, and it's 11,000 feet of runway. And an A380 aircraft can land at the Grant Williams International Airport. And I can also tell you that if, for example, when they have the space exploration program ongoing, and you remember you have the shuttles, the Atlantis and all those other shuttles, well, let me tell you this. Grant Williams International Airport is one airport facility in the entire Caribbean that the shuttle could touch down and land comfortably and bring it to safe harbor if there were any risks. So we still have some positives notwithstanding, but the construction of a runway is so designed to facilitate certain arrangements. But I'm not going to go in too deeply into that because I'm not the technical expert. But I'll first ask Professor Prasad to address the whole issue of stakeholder and public shareholding. And then Mr. Hadley Bourne will address the more technical issues on the runway facility. Professor?
Yes, so let me cover the sort of the finance side and Hadley deals with all the real stuff. So I think you make 2 really important points. I think our priority today is the staff. I think the staff are making an investment because, in a sense, because whilst we can do our best to keep conditions and terms the same, they are just naturally going to have some uncertainty out there. And I think that we need to show that we recognize they're making an investment in the future of our airport. And so that's why we want to give them first priority. If there are shares that are unpurchased, if there's scope for an additional issuance of shares later, I think that is something that your point, Leroy, is something we should take up very seriously. Seems to me that there are other ways in which we need to provide opportunities for the public to have access to capital. You know, we in the Caribbean, our development model has been about education. Every West Indian schoolgirl and schoolboy knows the phrase that the true answer to poverty is not money, it is knowledge. And we've invested heavily in education. But ownership also matters. And so we need to find opportunities for ordinary people to own things. We think there are probably other more immediate ways. We've got a rule that if you want the government to provide support for an investment, you've got to provide the opportunity for ordinary Barbadians to buy shares, and they need to be shares that you can buy, that small priced shares. You don't need to have a lot of money to buy a share. In terms of the second airport, and I know what you mean, I was involved in part in trying to support Dominica after Hurricane Maria, and the main airport had a real problem, and they were able to use a second airport. But I think, as the minister said, and Hadley can tell us some of the more technical details, these days modern airports really expensive for the certification of that runway. I think there's going to be nothing less than another $400 million. So I think the solution would be make sure that we have a Rolls-Royce state-of-the-art airport, number one, but we have some emergency planning for what happens if there's a problem with that airport. And it may be about actually the ability to use the runway in different ways, but also about some kind of alternative opportunity. So I think it's a great point, and we should certainly be thinking about it and developing some plans around it. But $400 million probably at a minimum.
Thanks for that, Avi. And there really isn't any technical stuff to add. That is the challenge, is investing. Leroy, your question is a very good one. And yes, over the last 20 or so years, there have been significant feasibility studies, especially as it relates to utilizing lands in the north of the island for an airport of a medium type category. But as Avi said, the main challenge there is the investment. Airport is not cheap. I mean, it was involved in a recent airport project across the region, and that was close to $600 million US. And it is not a cheap proposition. And even in a recent management meeting with the minister, I did raise the question as it pertains to emergencies and even smaller heliports or smaller type infrastructure, which I put myself in the mouth because now he's tasked me with a paper on that activity. So the challenge is not that it's not needed, it is the investment to facilitate such, and that is where the challenge is. Most of the studies have agreed that one is needed. The government has lands that were protected and identified, but the money to invest in such an infrastructure to meet the required regulatory requirements will be expensive. Yes, the feasibility studies that would have been done in that have outlined and identified certain areas that we've asked to be protected for when the time comes and investment is available.
Good evening to the head table. My name is Adrian Bailey. I'm the president of the Bridgetown Port Taxi Corp and also a member of the corp at the airport. Minister, I got a couple of questions, but I'll go to Mr. Prasad first. In your opening salve, Mr. Prasad, you had said you all were involved in negotiations with another company, and then you went to the Emirates. Pulling out of those negotiations, it cost the Barbados government any funds? I'll stand till you respond.
So breaking the previous negotiation caused us to pay a breakage fee. So what we negotiated with the Dubai consortium, that they paid an upfront fee that more than offset the breakage costs.
Could you share with us that fee that it would have cost the Barbados government?
I think that fee will be made up of a few things. So we have to make sure I convey the right thing, because there will be an actual breakage fee that was probably about $1 million. But there will also be the fact that many of us spent time, and how do we value time, and other people spent time. So I would say it was greater than $1 million, but we have negotiated an upfront payment that is going to be an upfront payment of $4 million US, and then a further additional payment later on. So so net, we're going to come out ahead on that.
Thank you on that one. Minister, this one's for you. I think the Grantley Adams International Airport, Sir Grantley Adams is a national hero of Barbados. And when you get correspondence coming out from the airport, they always go to the acronym, GAIA. If you speak to Americans on a day-to-day basis, they scold you for just saying JFK Airport. I would hope in this transition period that we do not lose the name of the great man, Sir Grantley Herbert Adams, going forward. Because when you see most of the paperwork coming out, and I know the acronym is easy for everybody to go with it, but I would hope that that name remained. I never said that you all are planning to move it. I don't want it to get lost, basically. So that's my small point. My major point here this evening is I come to represent the taxi operators, basically at Airport Minister, but I've missed your first meeting on the 2nd. I was involved in the next meeting on that particular day. But we have about 182 operators at the airport operating there on a day-to-day basis. And some of these guys dated back there from, I think, 1961 when it was civil. There's one major entry into the airport, and it hurts me sometimes when I go into the airport and I have to see the conditions. So I would hope going forward, Minister, attention is paid to that area. Just stick a pin. 6 planes on the ground, and there's a major irritant with taxi operators at the airport, and they're stalled. We are scrambling all over the place. It's difficult in this environment now that we are operating with. The conditions up there is archaic conditions. I mean, there's no proper facilities. You drive into the airport, hardly would drive in there on a day-to-day basis. A guy sitting up on a cement brick or old chair. So I would hope that if we invest in this money, for God's sake, remember those guys. These guys are in the twilight of their years, 70 and 80. You can't be operating so. It has to be some sort of cafeteria. You go inside the airport, they present everything for the guests, the visitors, the staff. These guys are putting in human service at the airport. A salt meat bucket, and we're talking the international airport. Minister, it seems that you're probably the best government minister. It seems so.
You're going to put me in trouble.
Well, you came from...
Unless you're setting me up.
Well, they're putting you in all the difficult ministries then. And I would hope some of the work that you would have done in public works, in this transformation at the airport, we can see some sort of... Our airport basically runs 24 hours. If you give and take, say 18 hours, you have to provide a service. So you start in the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning. It should be easy that the quarters that they should have a shower, that a guy could go and shower. He should have an area that he can go and get 2 hours sleep and start back to offer the service. We just cannot keep looking on the inside, and I will hope by tomorrow or next week, the 3 salt meat buckets I saw drivers sitting down on today, hardly For God's sake, get rid of them salt meat buckets. There's an international airport we're talking about. Yeah, you can speak.
Right.
No,
Let me, before you come, Hadley, and thank you very much for your contribution. The name of the Grant Williams International Airport, again, that is the decision of the governor of Barbados, and that's not going to change. There's no discussion. Recall that I indicated that the investor will come in, but the real estate belongs to the Grant Williams International Airport, Inc., and they're going to control, the board will control the real estate. There's absolutely no plan, none whatsoever, to change the name of the airport. Grant Williams International Airport will become, and will stay, the airport's name. So there's no issue in respect of a name change. That's not on the cards, not up for discussion.
Can you stick a pin? Because I don't want
Sure.
to walk away from here and say that I'm saying to you that
No,
you
no.
said that in your opening
No,
statement.
no.
All I say to you, once letters come out, we lost Grant Adams' name.
Mhm.
It always comes with just the acronym.
Yes.
So you never say that, so I understand that.
Right.
Continue, sir.
All right. So just to make that clear, in respect of the operations for taxi operators at the airport, and I'll ask Hadley to speak more directly to this, but the issue at the airport, and we recognize this, and that's what the negotiating team as well, and Avi may want to come in as well after Hadley, to expand on those points. But suffice to say, at the meeting we had with the concessionaires at the Grant Williams International Airport in the training room on August 9th, similar concerns were raised with respect to the operations of the taxi stand, what will happen to the taxi operators, which we'll address today. In addition to that, there was also the discussion point in respect of an exit. The fact that and it's also for security reasons as well, that we have to relook that all that's part of the plan is all engaged in the program that we have outlined for the Grant Williams International Airport, because it deals with the safety and security, anti-terrorism measures and mechanisms to avoid any attack or touch wood that never happens. So I'll ask Mr. Hadley-Bourne to address the more specific issues that you raised in respect of the taxi operators, and also Avinash will overlay on maybe 1 or 2 points. Mr. Bourne.
Okay, thanks for the question, Adrian. And you are correct, and I'll speak to the first one as it relates to the traversing and just one in, one out. And in the previous meeting, they did outline of the intention to have a road linking the taxi north to Highway 7, just probably a beam where the old gas station was, because it's not only a challenge for taxi operators, but it's also a challenge for staff when they leave the staff car park. So that's one of the things we had. But again, the major topic that would come out here is financing and investing. I mean, the plans were there to create that road. COVID came, finances became difficult. And we see it not only as a security, but a safety and emergency point of view to have an alternative route. So if there are any funds or if there are any entrepreneurs here who are willing to help us before the time comes with the investment, we'll be fine. But that point is taken because it is a difficult challenge. The point of the upkeep around the taxi stand, especially under my tenure within the last year or two coming out of COVID, we would have done some rehabilitation within the bathroom facilities, etc. We installed the showers. I know it's difficult for them to manage and maintain, especially when you have a lot of, let's say, males and how we treat to infrastructure. But there was some refurbishment done, and I do appreciate your call for the buckets and the oars, because the director of operations is here, and I come down on the operations team every time I pass and I see the old buckets, the old tanks, the old microwaves, the old fridges, move them. And so I do appreciate, and I've always said we all must have pride in what we do, and not only from a point of view of infrastructure, but even coming together and going back to that advent of uniformity, etc. So I do take your point, and it's something that I support, but it's work in progress, and I will see once I'm here, Minister, to also help push and support that, because my team will tell you, every one of the things that I am always sticking them on is our appearance and our pride and how we feel about our environment. I appreciate what you said about only looking after the tourists, etc., but I am strongly pushing also for us to have that sense of belief and pride in what we do and in our own environment. But our main challenge at this point in time, and that's why we are going in this route. Financially, it is difficult for us to do the things we want to do at this current time, and that's why the privatization and the economists and financial gurus like Dr. Prasad, Prime Minister, has engaged in taking us to that point where we can facilitate and have the money that is needed to move us to the next level.
I think you might also want to suggest, Mr. Bourne, that what I'm hearing Mr. Bailey say is that we may wish to consider having another session with the operators, taxi operators at the airport, with respect maybe to the increased number of shower stalls and other facilities as recommended, which are going to be obviously built into our program.
I think we have a meeting scheduled in the next couple of weeks with the taxi associations. That was coming out at the August meeting. There's one scheduled within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I would hope that I'd be invited, because sometimes when I come and speak, I don't ever get invited no more. It seems that I make people uncomfortable.
Well, no, you're not going to make any one of us uncomfortable. But before we pause, but what I will say to you that similarly, we are going to advertise the meeting. Again, as I indicated when I indicated in my ministerial statement, we are going to engage in a series of town hall meetings. Like I said, we met with labor, all three major unions there. We met with the concessionaires at the airport. There are meetings with the staff ongoing at the Grand Evans International Airport. You've heard Mr. Bourne, that's why I prompted him to make that point with respect to the taxi operators, and it will be open to the public, so it's not an issue where we're going to, like I said in my open remarks, we have nothing to hide, and I'll stand by that.
Minister, I don't want to steal this evening, but my final point, and Hadley, I understand, I empathize.
Sorry, hold on. Avinash Prasad wanted to make a point, if you don't mind. Sorry, my apologies.
I just wanted to add that there's going to be a lot of development, refurbishment, disruption that comes with development and refurbishment. And so the management team and Hadley and others are spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we have user committees that will have the opportunity for you to be part of the design and the refurbishment, get full information about what's happening, get your views on the design and refurbishment, especially when it impacts yourself and impacts the flow of you and your people and your customers. And also in all the information and communication on disruption. So you would know when something is being planned, some weeks and months ahead, so you look at what the alternatives are for that period. Thank you.
Okay, my final point, Hadley, back to you. I don't really think that the co-op at the airport can hold you down to this, but in a different world, you all should be made to pay. I did a count out of the 182 people at the airport. Within the last 6 years, 138 suffering with diabetes. Within the last 6 years, 82 people came down with diabetes because there's no proper cafeteria up there. And we can't expect someone at 65 to be eating greasy chicken wings. There have to be a proper cafeteria for the aging people who are offering the service. I close in my closing point.
No, thank you very much. And obviously in a quest to confirm NCDs, of course, your point is very well taken. I'll ask Mr. Bourne to address the issue.
Adrian, that point is taken, and in recent months we have been engaging in the aviation surveys through the Airports Council International, and we've also have a customer experience committee set up, and one of the things that keeps coming up and where we are falling down is in terms of our selection of foods, etc. So here's a point that's taken. I mean, we were even aware of the restaurant that was budding out of the taxi stand that we had to put a halt to. But your point is duly noted of the quality and choice of foods. I mean, even myself, trying to be a healthy eater, takes that into consideration. So that point is noted, Minister, and the NCD should look after the health of our taxi drivers.
So just quickly to you, and I really am not here to embarrass anyone, I sat on the Cruise Commission Board back in 2018. This is 2023. And this is a paper that I would have written for the Coast Commission Board. Nothing has been done. But as I said, I'm not here to embarrass anyone. And you know that I sat on that board.
I'll take that point. In 2018, it was nowhere wrong, but I will take that. So you're trying to say that nothing is going to happen as it relates to it? Because I'll say, and I'm not here to toot my horn or anything, but we have made significant improvements in the facilitation. Since I've come up trying to get them to come together, join one, rather than having divided mandates to unify. You would have seen also the improvement in the lighting with the input and infrastructure inside the car park. So we have made steps to improve where financially we were in a capacity to. And I say this, Minister, is that less than 18 months ago, persons remembered or forget the financial difficulties that Grantley Adams International Airport was in, and having to go to the financial market to borrow a significant amount of money just to keep us operational and keep staff employed. So as we return to a point of normality and funds and revenues begin to flow through our veins, I mean, some of our concessionaires are here, we would have been taking significant hits with what we would have allowed them to ease in terms of their rents and mics. But as money comes back, we're spending it and upgrading the infrastructure as best as we can.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, good night. Ronald Moore, representing the airport, authorized airport taxi drivers. Just to correct Mr. Bailey, it's not 180, it's 280 taxis that operate at the airport.
Apologize.
Apologies accepted. Right now, we have been operating at the airport now for more than 60 years. This is really the management of the airport. We've been trying to get a meeting with management now for a long time, since the race, to be exact. And everybody pushing one another. One operations manager pushing me one side, and another body pushing me one side, and can't give you a meeting. Right now, we have an infrastructure, a shed light over a sewer system at the airport operating. And when it starts to breathe, we are breathing in all of that. It's not only sitting on buckets, it's the kind of treatment we are getting at the airport, and management is not coming. They come in and looking at people in, running back, and still ain't holding the meeting with us. We are not treated right. If management is treating us, the present management is treating us so now, what is the new management going to do? Are they going to follow on like the present management? Are somebody going to hold a meeting with us? Tell us what is going on. People have a contract. Concessionaires have a contract. We don't have a contract, and we pay $15,000 a month to operate at the airport as a collective 280 taxis. We deserve better treatment than this. We don't want to hear about the new management take over that we out to sea. And the entrance into the taxi stand is a big, big problem at the airport. Big problem. Now, you don't have enough spaces for 280 taxis. And now to bring staff parking in the taxi stand, pushing we one side. So on a given day, a busy day, we got to be parking atop the lawn. Then the guards coming and running away. That's the kind of treatment we get, and we pay to operate at the airport. So somebody got to meet with us. I know they sent an email the other day saying that they're going to meet with me now the 30th of this month. Not 2-3 weeks from now, the 30th of this month. I'm making sure that I did, because this is unfair to us. Somebody got here. We want to know how we stand after this new management is kicking. We don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, and thank you for being very candid. And I really appreciate all the points you've made. I don't have to direct the board to have a meeting with you because your organization, because you've indicated that that meeting will happen on August the 30th, correct? Sorry, August the 30th. So, and I don't believe, I've known Mr. Hadley only for about a couple of months now as minister, but he's not let me down, put it that way, and I don't believe he will let us down in this matter. So rest assured that that meeting on track will be held on the 30th. I will be elsewhere, but I'll be checking in with the CEO and the board, of course, to follow up to see what was discussed and what actions are going to be taken. So that meeting will happen. And of course, feel free to offer, like you've done this afternoon, the suggestions to improve the area. In respect of the lack of parking space for the taxis, as I indicated, this matter was raised at our August 9th meeting with the concessionaires. It is a major issue. We're addressing the issue, and the issue will be on the table. In respect of airport and taxi operations, of course, the taxi operators play, as we all know, a very critical role in Barbados, is not only providing a taxi or transport service, but also helping us to sell hotels and attractions and everything else that we offer Barbadian. And therefore, that will continue to be a core element within. There's no, even where you have PPP operatings, there's not an arrangement where the taxis are excluded, because we recognize the role of the taxis. And there are some things very iconic to Barbados, including, for example, the manufacturing sector, the sale of condiments and other related items that we have. And those issues have already been tabled as part of the discussions with the negotiating team. Professor Persaud will also can add to what I'm saying. So I don't want to tell you that there are any fears on the horizons, and certainly no red flags as far as we are concerned. And coming out of that August 9th meeting, as we did with other stakeholder sessions that we had, there was some very pertinent information that we took away. And it's not that overnight the taxi association is going to disappear, and we plan to bring another taxi association, okay? There are certain contractual agreements that must be honored. And as I indicated not so long ago, there are certain elements of the Barbadian culture that will continue, and there's no dispute about that. Professor Persaud, perhaps you will wish to weigh in on this before I hand the floor back to Mr. Moore. Professor.
Thank you, Minister. I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing a sense of disrespect. I'm hearing a sense of organizational issues. Things could be organized better. And I'm also hearing what I would call infrastructure issues, shared parking space. I think part of the problem, not the whole problem, has been a lack of money, which has meant that many of those issues have been kicked down the road because there was no money to deal with them. A key part of what we're trying to do with this concessionaire agreement is provide that investment. We need proper infrastructure. We need better space. We need better routes. That requires money. So now here's the opportunity for that investment. But you need to have a voice, you all need to have a voice in how that money and that design is spent. So the users, like yourself, will have a seat at the table in looking at that design and that refurbishment and providing us, because you guys are experts, and you're probably more expert than many, about the actual flow, the logistics of how things operate, right? So we need your input into that better design. But I think part of the problem, not the whole problem, has been that there wasn't the money to provide the infrastructure necessary to give you the proper in working environment. And now that's here, let's spend it well, and let's make sure we can improve what is being offered for you as well as the users of the airport.
Any other questions, sir?
One thing, you said, what was your name, sir? Ronald Moore. And which association you represented?
The Barbados Transport Co-op Society.
Okay. Well, what I was saying...
I speak for all of them, all 280. But I in that organization, because there's a few organizations.
How many organizations are there, Ronald? So, and that's one of the things since I came up saying, there's so many organizations and so many different representations coming to us, and I've said, you guys should come under one umbrella, because I've sat in many meetings chaired under the previous minister with Mr. Banton and other taxi associations. That's why he said there's so many coming to us. Come as one umbrella body, and that's one of the things we're going to try to get you guys to come to a common understanding at that next meeting, is that yes, you have challenges, yes, you have problems, but when we keep getting different requests or different from various subsets, and it doesn't seem to be aligned. Once you guys are aligned and come to us with that position, then we'll be able to move forward. And I've been trying and I've been pleading with all of you to come to a common understanding that we can move forward rather than having divergent views. So I hope to see you at that meeting on the 30th. I know it was going to be covered by the operations team, but I'm going to make sure that I'm present at that meeting.
I hope so. But before you, I know you, the management is using this excuse, but they got 6 organizations. All 6 is speaking with the same voice. So don't look at 6 people and 6 people coming to you different. Because management before you, 50 years before you, well, you were here a short time, so 60 years before you, we're saying the same story, all the winner. But it's all speaking on the one voice. We want better treatment. We want to know how we stand after the new management, and that's it. One voice.
Mr. Moore, I appreciate that, but I am speaking from a factual point of view, and from what has come to me, it's not being confrontational, and we've been trying to improve the conditions in that regard, and we're hoping that this is a new move forward. We've come out of COVID. We're trying to make the conditions better. I'm sure you would have seen in some of the rehabilitation and the cleaning up of the area. And remember, we would have even reached out to say, let's realign and see how best we could facilitate the car park. We understand the challenges. We are not running from them. And that's why we said that meeting that we've already had scheduled. And you recognize that the meeting is not being scheduled on because we have a town hall meeting that was previously scheduled to deal with these concerns and hopefully move forward.
But what I will also give you the assurance, Mr. Moore, to the management, the board of management, what we need to do, and maybe we should have ongoing dialogue, and perhaps what you should consider, CEO, is maybe having quarterly meetings, because the feedback, there are certain areas where I think we can help the taxi associations in terms of how we want to go forward. And I think that will be an opportunity for you to listen to them, for them to listen to you, and come to common core. All right? So we'll do that for you, Mr. Moore, and your associations, okay?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, good night. My name is Grantly Seeley. And just a simple observation first. From the amount of uproar that I've been hearing about this public-private partnership on the radio, I would figure that more people would have been in here. Just an observation. I just want one simple question. I hearing about all these percentages between the government and the investors. Could you just give an idea of where these fees will be coming from to support this 60-40, 30-70 percentage? That is what I am interested in. Where are the fees coming from?
Okay, so I'll let Professor Avinash, but let me also make the point that we still have a fair representation. But certainly when we met with the unions, when we met with the staff, and of course when we met with the concessionaires, we had a very good turnout in terms of persons asking the questions. And you will recall as well that I had delivered a ministerial statement which was about almost 50 minutes long. And the reason why it was that long, because we took the time to make sure we explain in very detailed format how we intended to proceed with this transaction. And that's why you hear me keep making the point that I have nothing to hide as minister. The proposal has been properly evaluated in terms of heads of terms agreement. We had a college of negotiators, the board of the Grant Williams International Airport, and part of the negotiating team consists of individuals who work at the airport, and therefore they have a vested interest in the successful outcome of this transaction. I'll ask Avi to just go into perhaps some more specifics in terms of, one, the length of the program. He would have told you the quantum investment, which is 300 million, and also go into some details in respect of the allocation of revenue considering the investment.
So the source of the revenues, so we talked about the percentages, the source of the revenues, the largest amount is the passenger service levy, which you may recall in the past was like our departure tax. And then there's the commercial activities. So we charge the airlines, or we charge for managing cargo and all of those things. So it's a series of the commercial activities, which we feel there's potential for greatly expanding, especially if we become a cargo hub for the world. We have compared our charges with other international airports, and we have to make sure that we're offering high quality service, but we think there's scope for those charges to increase in some places and not in others. And there's the passenger service levy, the departure tax. So those are the primary revenues. The passenger service levy is not going to go up. Hopefully there'll be more passengers paying that, but we think there's a big scope on the commercial activity side. I think if you visited international airports, you'll see that our amount of commercial activity is not as great as it could be.
And I would add there as well, the issue, to follow through on what Avi's indicated, the modernization of retail space. Now, as we all know, how airports make a lot of their revenue is through the creation of what I refer to as a modernization of retail space, and how you configure the retail space. All right, so you have planners who come in and determine this is where you should allocate it, this is how we should have it positioned. You do that in such a way that you have what I refer to as flow-through traffic, so that the person who is departing Barbados will be faced or will see a number of retail spaces for a variety of retail items that would entice them or inspire them to purchase something as they exit the airport. And that is what happens as it relates to retail space. And things are very well designed. If you're, for example, coming through the United Kingdom, if, let's say, Heathrow Airport, it's a mall experience in itself. You have everything, and that's design, and that's how operators in the PPP, that's how they also drive revenue. So a lot of the revenue that you will see coming from a modernized Grant Lems International Airport will relate not only to passenger traffic coming through the airport, but it will relate specifically to how you utilize the retail space to drive additional revenue. On top of that, you will realize that as a dovetail strategy, I am on the road with my permanent secretary and others quite often. And what we're doing, as you may know, is that we're also talking to airlines that are currently not serving Barbados to encourage them to come to Barbados. You have seen the strategy that we've adopted with the Latin American market that has moved from 2 Copa flights per week to 3 Copa flights, and we're working on additional Copa. Just using that as an example. And that's part of the Latin American strategy that we are pursuing, and thankfully it's really paying dividends. Even the load factor coming in with Copa, as it would tell you, is very, very strong. And we are not finished there. There are other, I'm not going to announce it now, but there are other initiatives that we are obviously working on within the Latin American market to drive increased business to Barbados. So the passengers will come and utilize that. The other issue that we market that we are going after in the most fundamental way is the Gulf states. So we're into the Gulf states, we're working the Gulf states. It might take you 3 years to build it out properly, but we're in there. And after we've settled those, then we're going now, we have to look at the Asia market, which is going to be, we're not ready to announce that yet, but to let you know where we're going and how we intend to drive increased passenger traffic through Barbados, linking it as well to our air-to-sea cruise business, because that's a huge opportunity for us that we aren't maximizing. In addition to that, we're building out Barbados as a hub for the Eastern Caribbean, and that is why, as Avi indicated, it's so critical for us to improve the infrastructure of the airport. We want to make sure we have air travel across Africa coming across. There are a number of airlines, international airlines, Turkish, Emirates, and others that service those routes going down there. And we believe it's a wonderful opportunity for us in terms of reducing the travel time from those areas on the way to Barbados because of our geographic location, the benefit. It works for us and it works against us. But in this case, it will work for us. And building a hub for the Eastern Caribbean will be substantial. And we are also taking other initiatives. You will recall not so long ago what we did with Virgin in terms of tag flights to obviously assist our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and Grenada in terms of how we're building out tag flights. Virgin has built that into a little hub in this side, and that again brings additional revenues to Barbados, drives additional traffic to Barbados. What we are also working on is that we are working on a facility which we believe can even impress and become the first country within the Eastern Caribbean to drive additional traffic. We have engaged a team of consultants to help us with a number of arrangements, including obviously us having to drive Barbados as a destination where if you clear in Barbados, then you can travel on to another island with another state without having to go through the customs procedures. So what we refer to as pre-clearance. And that's top of the mind. It's a work in progress. It's not going to happen next year, but we are diligently working behind the scenes to ensure that as part of the strategy to build a hub in Barbados, that we also dealing not only with cargo, but we also deal with passenger traffic. Just imagine if we have a pre-clearance facility in Barbados, that you can clear in Barbados cargo and passengers to move on to another destination without. What it does for us as destination, it makes my job and the job of the BTMI a bit easier in terms of having to do as much marketing as we're doing. It also allows for the aircraft coming to Barbados to have a quicker turnaround. And you know, because of our geographic location, the challenge has always been for the aircraft to turn around in Barbados to get back to their bank, what they call their bank in the United States, for example, in order for them to move that aircraft to another destination. So this, without having to overnight. So we're working on that strategy. You would have realized just recently, last week, American Airlines came out with an announcement that they're going to have the third daily service out of Miami from November this year through, in addition to the Charlotte other services. And we're diligently working with them. We were in the United States in June. We met with a number of carriers that currently do not service Barbados, and there we are working and massaging that relationship to get them here. And the ones that are currently serving us, for example, at United, we have a great strategy in terms of starting earlier, allowing them to gradually build the business incrementally. I might add, even with those United States carriers, we don't have to pay or give them any funding because the business is driving it. Of course, we need more airlift into Barbados, and that's what we're working on. And very shortly, the BTM will be making additional announcements in terms of the airlift. So just try to share how we're going about it, why we're doing what we're doing now, because once we get a new, or should I say a modernized facility, it would make our jobs a bit easier in terms of managing the airport, in terms of driving traffic to the business. So it's a lot of work, but I thought I would be somewhat expansive on this point because it shows what we're doing. It's not easy, I might add, but at the same time, it's a reflection of where we want to go strategically. So I just thought I'll share that with you, if you don't mind. Sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Burgess Thornhill. I'm a customer service officer. I have listened to Mr. Bailey and Mr. Moore. One thing I have observed for a taxi service for 60 years, to give is to get. I work in customer service. It is hard to identify taxi drivers. I have to be identified. Mr. Bourne have to be identified. It is only fair for 60 years, and they don't have a uniform. Passengers will forget something in a taxi. No, I'm serious. Passengers will forget something in a taxi, and they will call. I was in a taxi. It took me to Accra. I don't know the person's name. They would try to identify as much. Mr. Moore, you got to be fair. If you're going to ask for improvement of infrastructure, you have to improve presentation. And some taxi drivers wear slippers. Some, I believe if they could take off the clothes, they would. Some of them in vests. Their parents are not 60 years of improvement. I work in customer service. I have to be attired. Your taxi may need to be attired. Let us get real today. Because if the airport is to upgrade, we all need to be upgraded. And I'm serious. I speaking on behalf of my department. It is identification, and when the passengers have to report, they see me first. I'm front line. So if you want management to give you better service, infrastructure, we all need to upgrade ourselves. This is what I put into the table this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bourne, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thanks for that. And I don't want this session just to evolve into a taxi facilitation, but a lot of the challenges that have been raised, that's why we are having that meeting, and we're going to be adding these things on the agenda for discussion. The whole uniform issue, other contractual issues were raised, and we hopefully will deal with all of those when we have that meeting. And for those of you who identify that you do not get the notification, you can share your information with Charlene before we leave so that we ensure that you're on the communication list when that information is sent out.
Just a quick point to the head table and to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, International Transport. This is not an inference. It's not an educated guess. It's clearly going into the airport, Minister. The bus stop into the city and the bus stop out of the city, they're too close. It caused a bottleneck. It's a simple situation going into the airport. You can got two bus stops, one into the city and one out of the city, and two buses like 60 feet apart. So it's something that.
It's a good suggestion, and yes, we will follow through on that. Thank you for raising it. No, it's also critical to the flow of traffic flow in the area. Okay.
Good evening. William Drayton, Quintour's taxi, and also taxi operator. I don't want to be with too much back and forward with this taxi thing at the airport because all of us, I would say, we are a team. I would like you guys to walk with me a little, and I believe I have said this already. When a person gets off an airline, you see a couple reps as you come down the stairs. You go into immigration, maybe a minute or two with immigration, where you're staying, whatever. You leave there, you go into customs. Do you have anything to declare? Or you might meet the red cap and you walk out. That passenger is with the taxi operator. If we are going to Sugarcane Club, St. Peter's, St. Lucie, at least an hour. I think we are very, very important in marketing. In other words, I believe I can call companies. Let's say Diamonds International, and I had said to my operator, to my guests, Diamond International don't have the correct or whatever their market or whatever jewelry. What pays not a problem. They tend to believe me. If I say don't go to Brown Sugar restaurant, there are a lot of roaches, they tend to believe me. Sorry to say it like that. The company is not there anymore, so I mean, it's closed, so, but sorry. But all I'm saying is that we are very, very important. My friend said that taxi drivers are not identified. That's not true. We don't have a pass, yes. Most of us do not have a pass operating at the airport. There is an invoice written by the dispatcher for every taxi operator that move from the airport. The time you move the job, the price, the date, and so on. So it's wrong to say you get lost somewhere along the line. I was at the airport 36 years now. 36 years. And I believe I do an excellent job. I believe a lot of the guys do an excellent job. As you would have heard Mr. Bailey, Mr. Moore say, we are still sitting on salt meat buckets. Every management at the airport, we have gone and had meetings and tried to get things together and try to put things in place. Can you imagine digging a sewage well? A sewage well. You dig the sewage out. These sewage is going in there, and then you build a building on top of that and put taxi men in to sit down. Roaches running up at night. Big centipedes running up at night. And we still operating there? I mean, come on, man. These big men and women. So to say that, well, I mean, everybody have their opinion. On the negative side, we do a good job. In everything, or in every organization, there are a few bad apples, and we have a few bad apples. Every taxi driver, some would wear their slippers because of having shoes and socks on all day, or because of problems with their feet. They keep slippers on sometimes till they move out the stand. But when you go to the stand, yes, you guys relax. Anyhow.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Drayton, for your feedback. Let me also thank you for being so candid as well. As I indicated earlier, there's a need for the airport to have quarterly, at a minimum, quarterly meetings with the taxi operators to address the issues. The issues you've raised and identified are about fair in my judgment, and therefore, as the Chief Executive Officer of the airport indicated, he will be having a meeting on August 30th. What I can commit to you and tell you that as Minister, I will also be staying on top of the issues. The airport was built, the Neurowin was built more than, 50 years now, approximately. And therefore, yes, what obtained then, obviously, versus now. I indicated earlier that when we had a session August 9th, the issue of not only conditions, but additional parking space for the taxi operators. I give you my commitment. I will stay on top of the issue and to ensure that you have regular feedback sessions. Because I think as I listen here, I think we don't want it to be going this way, a blame session where, you're being blamed or airport being blamed. We need to cut the blame out, and we have to focus strategically. What are the issues impacting the taxi operators at the airport? Identify those and come up with a plan to address them. But we will not only come up with a plan to address them, but we monitor them to ensure that progress is happening. We can't get everything in one go, and I think you respect that. But the issue for us is to ensure that we have discussion, but that we also see very measurable improvements in terms of how operators are taking care of the airport from both sides, from the customer perspective issues, also from the logistics standpoint where we are faced with such challenges. So we give you our word. I don't think we need to add too much to that. Have you wanted to make one?
Can I just say that although there has been a little bit of back and forth, I think it does actually reflect a little bit of what this is all about. If I were to just give you a little bit of indulgence, when I left Barbados age 7 and arrived in Mill Hill, London, my dad said that I was the ambassador to Northwest London from Barbados. So this little 7-year-old went around to all these bewildered English people saying, good morning, and we're all ambassadors to Barbados. And the taxi drivers in particular, all the vendors, all the concessionaires, all the staff, the immigration officers, the customs officers, we're all ambassadors to Barbados. We have had a lot of international visitors recently because of the leadership the Prime Minister has played on climate change. And the first thing they say to us is what their taxi driver told them in gory detail about the Prime Minister, about policy, about the country. And so we know how important everyone is. And I think we're all in this together. And I think we recognize that we have the aspiration, but without the money, we cannot hit our aspiration. And this is our opportunity to invest and let that investment match our aspiration to be the best in the world and to convey and show that to the world. And that's what we need to do.
Before we take another contribution from the audience, I'd like to read a question that is online. Frank Thomas asks, is there a portal or avenue to offer types of services or vendors suggestions besides restaurants and hotels that can operate at the airport to create more jobs?
Maybe the operator, I don't like to, as a minister, I have to be very careful not to be going into areas and lines of responsibility. And perhaps a board member or Mr. Halley should speak to this. From a policy perspective, I can give some input, but perhaps you, Mr. Hadley-Bourne, as CEO, may wish to speak to this.
For clarity, Charlene, what was the gist of the question? A portal?
Yes, the question asks, is there a portal or avenue to offer types of services or vendors suggestions besides restaurants and hotels that can operate at the airport to create more jobs?
Yeah, there is, and normally we have various communication channels, whether it be on our social media page or through the website, but normally for these types of services, they're normally facilitated through our commercial department. So you would just reach out and contact the commercial department or my ably now corporate communications specialist, so we could guide all of those questions and queries in that direction.
Good evening. Tony Selby, Christoph's Cafe. Change is inevitable. And first of all, let me thank the head table for another excellent presentation. Change is inevitable, and we recognize the world is changes, and changes must take place. 15, 20 years ago, our airport was hailed as unique, different, tropical. The ticketing counters, open air, or rather unair-conditioned, I should say. We, as Barbadians, probably don't like that because we tired of the heat, but the tourists love it. While I recognize that, or I hear comments that the entire facility is now going to be enclosed, I think that is something that needs to be given additional thought. I don't want to, or if I was a tourist, I wouldn't want to come to a hotel in Barbados, and it's the same as if I'm going to a hotel in London. Than if I'm at a hotel in London. So I think that consideration needs to be given to the uniqueness of our airport. You know, our tourists, they want to get the last bit of sun out of Barbados before they leave. You see them sitting on the benches adjacent to the car park and so forth, some having a smoke. Presently, for example, I find our ticketing counters to be relatively comfortable in terms of heat. As a matter of fact, with the air conditioning system not working now inside the airport, it's actually more pleasant than inside the airport. So I just thought that without the benefit of seeing the design and what is planned, I think it's something that needs to be in the back of our mind. The uniqueness of our place, why people come here, why they want to be here, and not just turn our airport into another airport that could be in London, New York, anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Selby. Very valid and very important point. But if I were not to listen to you, then I would be charged with dereliction of duty, because this is an area which you are known for and an area for which I'm unqualified. But I do take your points. They're very relevant. I'm not sure if Mr. Prasad has, you're working closely with the, as part of the negotiating team on the project. You may wish to add some points to that. Thanks.
Tony, it's in the back of our mind, it's in the front of our mind. I think making sure that the airport has a true Barbadian character is critical. And they're not coming to us telling us that they want to do this. We're going to them talking about the challenges of the existing arrangement that may have worked best in a particular environment, but today is tougher. And so we're looking at all the options. We don't want to spend money if we don't have to spend money. We don't want to spend money if it actually makes our place be less attractive, clearly. But I think that there's going to have to be a degree of enclosure for a number of reasons, whether it is about comfort for passengers and for those who work at the airport in dealing with a world in which we are facing more extreme weather shocks. We saw what happened during Elsa and the tragedy of the ashfall. And so we just need to move up to the higher standard, but at the same time maintaining character. Now, we have the ability to have a no objection. We have an ability to object if we feel the design does not maintain the unique Barbadian character. And so we need to get that balance right. I mean, there's no easy answer to get that balance right, but that's what we're trying to do.
I understand that fully, but remember when Elsa and when we had the ashfall in particular, a lot of air conditioning systems got clogged up as well. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Selby.
Good night. My first name is Faye.
I just one other comment. Listening to Mr. Selby, we certainly take on board your points. I just wanted to add to what Dr. Prasad also indicated. It is not just in terms of the character, but we're also looking at not only the climatic conditions that are now facing us, but also in terms of the security that is now become more heightened across the world. And Barbados is not left out of that scenario. So it is taking those factors into condition that may require us to also do a bit of enclosure, but of course still trying to maintain the character of what we have had before us for the last 50 years or so. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Good night again. I'm going to look at efficiency. You know, if a company...
Sorry, what's the name? Sorry.
Fairwood. We know that if a company is run efficiently, it will be able to pay its taxes. What I want to know from you, and saying that there's a lot of inefficiency in the private and public sector at this time, and there's a heavy reliance on government. Can you tell me what you have in place for this structure to create a more efficient GAIA? That is one. And the other one, I am impressed about the hotels and cargo and so on. But are we going to look at maintenance and repair? Recently I was sitting near to Shafet and I heard a pilot saying he has to take a plane to Canada to have it maintained. Is maintenance in our plans going forward?
Yes, I can tell you, in fact, there are a number of requests coming into the Grand Williams International Airport for maintenance facilities, including requests from regional carriers. There is a facility that is proposed that can also service the MAX 8 aircraft, and that we have, and this is a new MAX 8, and those recommendations are certainly with the Grand Williams International Airport. I know Mr. Bourne can go into detail and tell you a little bit more about the real estate proposition for maintenance and what we're doing, but certainly we have seen a significant interest in Barbados as an aviation hub. You will note, as part of the new runway expansion program, if you're landing in Barbados, to the right you will see that there's also an apron there reserved for private jets, in addition to what we have on the left when you're arriving, if you're touching down the aircraft. So there is a substantial amount of work that will be done there. The investment, and we're working, that's why the permanent secretary went to all lengths to explain what we're doing, even with the new Civil Aviation Authority and the work that is required to complement what we're doing at Grant Lemons International Airport. In respect of efficiency, you can always measure efficiency by a number of models. Obviously, if you are into the airport business, they have the rule of thumb analyses that they would perform and that we do. The truth test to all of this is it's no different from managing any business. You measure your rate of return. What is it? How much of the revenue, $1 you get, how much can you drop to the bottom line, right? And putting it doesn't sound crass, but I'm trying to give you a perspective that if you're going to invest money in a facility, you ultimately want returns. And I think that's your question. And how do we drive the returns from the business? And like I explained earlier, there's going to be revenue coming from, for example, landing fees. You have revenue coming from passenger traffic. You will have revenues coming through from the experience in the mall. For example, if you create the shopping, you modernize the retail experience, that will allow people to spend more. One of the things that we have to do a better job in is how do we extrapolate the spend from tourists who come to Barbados. And we have to pay greater attention. So the airport PPP is going to be one such proposition. And within the ministry itself, what we're doing in talking to the hotel associations and others in the accommodation sector is to how do we drive the additional spend. And we are measuring that as well internally because we have the tools to measure that. So the efficiency of the airport has to do with how profitable the operation will be. And it also drives, for example, how best we can measure customer satisfaction, because that will be a key. And all the work that we intend to do in terms of driving new airlift to Barbados, doing the maintenance facility, it comes down to the common denominator. How profitable can we make an operation? How successful? And that, in order to be profitable, you have to put a number of measures. You have to make sure that your facility is modern. You have to make sure you take care of your staff and you pay them well. You have to make sure that, for example, you are servicing your debt if you have debt. There are a number, and I can go through it all. And that's the difference in terms of how you measure the success of a operation. And for some people, what they do, they measure on the strength of the balance sheet, not on the P&L, but on the balance sheet. So there are a number of measures that we could look at and we can discuss in terms of airport modeling. How do you make a business more efficient and more successful? For us, key to it will obviously be revenue generation. And as indicated earlier, we have a revenue share arrangement in place. And therefore, that can also show us the measure of success. I'm not sure if I answer your question, but if I don't, you can ask me the question again. I think Professor Persaud wants to add some more comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have to balance three different things. The first one is that critical to aviation is safety. And that requires very high engineering standards on maintenance and safety. And we lose certifications if we don't hit those standards. And we aim to upgrade our certification and standard. So that's the first thing we have to do. And that requires what we call, when we speak to the concessionaire, we make a distinction between mandatory investment that has to be done to maintain the maintenance and the standards and the engineering and to upgrade where we want to be as a Category 1 airport, and things that improve customer service. The second thing is what I might call, to balance, financial efficiency. Well, there's nothing that's going to give more pressure for financial efficiency than they're spending $300 million of their money. And there's no guarantee return except a share in the revenues. So if you spent $300 million of your money, or you would be trying to make sure that revenues and costs were well managed. So we think that they have good incentives for financial. But I think I want to end with the third thing we need to balance, which is customer satisfaction. Because they could drive financial efficiency so hard that it's not such a pleasant experience, even though they're getting revenues. I don't know how many of you have been through JFK or Heathrow recently, and you find it always looks crowded. You know why it always looks crowded? It's designed to be crowded because they don't want people to be comfortable. They want people to be shopping. People are desperately in search of a salt meat bucket in Heathrow because somewhere to sit down. There's nowhere to sit down. Now, we don't want to go to that point, so we've got to balance these three things: customer satisfaction, financial efficiency, and engineering, maintenance, and safety standards. Have I missed out anything, Hadley?
Yeah, I'm hearing you, but as you know, people make things happen. How are we going to prepare our people? Yes, you keep stressing on 300 million. I'm going to speak from my perspective. There's no way that I would be investing 300 million and my people are not ready. You know, when we look at attendance of work, skills, how are you all looking at that holistic part of it? Because there's no way, I tell you, I would not invest 300 million and I have a workforce that don't have the requisite skills. I heard you earlier speaking about these experts and so on that would be coming in. Are we also, do we have a pool of experts here? You know, you spoke about education. How are we going to fit into this picture in order to make this revenue, this customer satisfaction? How you are preparing me?
Faye, that is exactly, you've hit the nail on the head. And the key to that is training. And so a critical part of the heads of terms has been a commitment of investing in our staff. Because we need to invest in our staff, our people, to do the transformation. The transformation, we need, the money is the fuel for the transformation. But as you said, you need people.
But you know, too, some of us are not trainable. And you have to be honest.
But Faye, I think that what you have to do as an economist, what we try to do is make sure the incentives are correctly aligned.
And I would train my ass.
The person who's investing $300 million is very incentivized to make sure that this is working. They're more incentivized than anybody else to make sure it's working. And so we think, and we need to make sure they're on the right page and that they're not going to, so the investment of training, I think, is key to that. But they're very incentivized to do that. And we've got to hold their feet to the fire, one on the financial return, but also on customer satisfaction and on engineering, quality, safety standards.
Because I really want this 300 million. And to the other part, about the maintenance and so on, that is going to be included. Okay, so it would not have a pilot just sitting saying he has to take his plane. Hallie, you mentioned a smart, we will be able to do big planes too as we progress?
Well, I'm going to out Faye.
Out me?
Yeah, when I say out you, Faye is one of our employees, so that's why she has this tacit knowledge. And yes, our intention, especially from a hub point of view and servicing aircraft, especially out of the South America region as a hub, and that's where you would have known with the facilitation of the South Apron. The intention is to develop that site into a maintenance and repair facility for all categories of aircraft, at least up to category D or E.
Right, so I'm going to leave it. Please invest in our people.
That's the intention.
Thank you.
Let me add, Faye, I'm sorry, to give a little bit more color. A little bit more fact to the expression,
yes,
what was being done here.
There are a lot of us who can add value that those skills were not unearthed as yet. And speaking on behalf of them, I would implore you all to really investigate. I know all cannot go, even from my observation. I say if I was investing 300 million, I know it would not keep some. But we all can say if I employ the board, my CEO, my HR manager, to do the best, to keep as many as possible. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I want to indicate is as Dr. Prasad indicated, we've been looking at this from a holistic perspective in the ministry. And we've been seeing some of the skills gaps that exist in aviation. We're seeing these skills gaps right across the sector. There is a plan that we're working on in order to provide the level of training that is necessary, but we also recognize that as we are working to move our people up to the skills levels, it will also require us to do some importation of skills in order to get that transfer of knowledge and skills. There are persons who've been in this business for 30 years, 35 years, and so on. Particularly on the aviation side, I've recognized that there is a predisposition for persons who are fairly mature because you're required to have a number of years experience in order to be seen as someone who's an expert in your area. So what we have been doing, look, let me give you an example. We are not in a position at this point to identify persons readily who would have the skills as an airworthiness inspector. Someone who would be a flight ops inspector, and that requires a person who, as a flight ops inspector, you have to be a trained pilot. And usually what happens, these are people who may have operated as a commercial pilot and then later may switch to regulation. And that requires some training as you move from the commercial to the regulatory. Persons who are operating as a, the airworthiness inspector needs a background in engineering. We have persons who needs to be aerodrome inspectors, which would be doing the inspection of the airport and so on. Those are persons who will have at their core training who are either civil engineers, persons who have electrical engineering, and persons who are also skilled as architects. So when you fuse these core skills and then you layer the aviation on them together, you understand now the kind of experience of people who are in the field. So what we're doing is trying to now aggressively identify the skills that are required and then have those persons, because we need Barbadians with those core skills, train, and then you can layer the aviation training on top of that they can grow in the business. So until we meet those standards, we will have to do some importation of skilled labor to augment what we have on the ground, and then allow our persons to also learn from these individuals.
However, you're working on that though with alacrity, that our Barbadians can add value and so on to that.
It is.
And something that scared me too, when I was very enthusiastic listening to the Latin American market, but the different types of Spanish, all I can say is hello, I know about money, and that is an area too that concerns me. And I hope, again, that we are looking at that with alacrity, because as I said, I really want this 300 million.
There's also
to come and, the partnership to be positive and things like that. But listening, it's okay to say we are going into this market and the next market, and the language barrier, that concerns me.
We have been working assiduously with a number of groups. In fact, we've had meetings, and if you take the Venezuelan Embassy Institute that has been operating here for a number of years, providing language training. And they are actually keen to work with us. We've had some meetings with them recently to transfer the training from in the institute to actually write in the community. So it's not only persons learning language at school, but also to take it to the community at the community level and partner with also other groups that are coming in to help us do French. And if we're going into the the Asian market as well as the Middle East, and also to understand the cultural nuances that we will also have to have our persons skilled and trained in. So it's looking at a holistic, and in terms of the maintenance, we recently also in the ministry worked with someone to help us develop an aviation strategy, of which maintenance is one of them. And I must commend a group of young engineers who have actually taken over the work that was done by Air Canada here. And they've actually formed a company, and they're offering that service to the airlines here in Barbados. And I must commend them on that, because this is a group of young engineers.
Send my commendations too.
Sorry?
I told you to send my commendations also.
Okay, so this is just the beginning, but is the type of foundation now that we have to build, that opportunity expands not only to these young persons, but we do also have, before the ministry at this point, some applications where persons are interested in setting up the hangars to allow for the maintenance of aircraft here in Barbados.
We have
So
the space?
I believe we do.
Very good.
We do.
Because the airport is a prime piece of real estate.
Yes. So it is taking these different strands and recognizing that the puzzle, each piece have to fit if we are able to really realize the objective and the goal that we are trying to move towards, where Barbados become that hub. So to make it the hub, you need to have all these different services working collectively to make it happen.
Thank you, Pierre.
Yeah, go on there.
We have another question from an online viewer. Question is to Dr. Prasad. You spoke to the profit split of 60-40 and the investment of the concessionary agreement of $300 million. Considering that this investment comes at the cost, and he puts that in quotation marks, of reducing profits by 60%, what is the estimate reduction or change in dollar value of the profits that will come from the airport?
No, it's not profits, it's revenues. So in fact, our profits jump substantially. Today, we make profits of around 12% in a good year. Now we'll be getting, as a pure profit, that 40%, because we won't have any costs. The people the concessionaire, who's getting 60% of the revenues, is getting 60% of the revenues and having to pay for all the costs of the airport. So if you like, our profits, although you wouldn't call it a profit because it goes from a profit to a revenue, but our profit goes from 12 to at least double, maybe treble that. Now, we've got things to do with that money. We've got to make sure we pay back the debt for the runway and the apron, but that does provide us a greater amount of financial flows than we had beforehand.
Dr. Prasad, how soon can we get an artist's impression of the whole development of the airport with this $300 million? I know that the minister said there will be more town hall meetings. So I'm trying to find out if the next town hall meeting we can have an artist's impression. You can answer that one. And my last question, because this is past my bedtime. Coming out of this new development of the airport, are we going to bring along the black sheep, which is the regional carrier, to make sure to take away those complaints of Barbadian people and Caribbean people traveling through the Caribbean? So we wouldn't have that problem anymore at regional level. You can speak to those.
The issue of transit for people within the region, I think it's an important one that we're looking at. because we want to be this international hub that people come in and then maybe they're traveling to St. Vincent or Dominica, and we need to make that much more efficient than it is today and much easier. So that's certainly one part of the agenda of looking at that. There's going to be a rolling series of refurbishments. There is we've divided up the refurbishment into two, sort of things we want them to do within the first few years and things that they will do when the airport has expanded and there are more people and therefore more revenues. And so I'm not sure there's going to be one master plan that we can look at, but as soon as things are coming through town and country planning and we're actually clear on what those investments are, we will be showing that and trying to get your input on whether that makes sense as a user of the airport, someone who knows the airport well. So there will be a rolling process.
Going on from where he left off, interregional travel got a hit here within the last couple of years, and we know as the governments have been meeting to look at the ticket fares, but I haven't seen it, no reflection in a lower rate within recent times. Can you tell me if they're making any progress along those lines, getting ticket price lower for interregional travel? Because that's a bugbear right now for Caribbean people.
As you may or may not know, the government of Barbados, and I had the opportunity to pilot through Parliament, did the service charge amendment bill. And what we did is that we set out for Barbados to have a reduction in the service charge paid by passengers within the region from July 1 until December the 14th. So we've taken, I know Avi will speak to us because he's been working closely with the heads on this matter, but we have taken, Barbados that is, has taken the first step in terms of doing it for that defined period. Now we did it also, of course, to lower costs for the traveler, but we also did it to increase our share of traffic to Barbados. We did it as a competitive edge, and that, you know, thanks be to God, that's working well for us. We're seeing the numbers and how well we are performing. We're not back to 2019 levels, but we're getting close. Avi, you may want to add.
I would only add that, look, we all want to lower that fee as much as possible in order to kickstart, to expand regional travel. I mean, we can hardly call ourselves a region when the cost of travel is so great. We are the most expensive region in the world to move around. And we know the problem as passengers. Have you seen cargo? And if you can't get cargo moving around, we're not a region. So we know what we need to do, but here are the two constraints. Firstly, the system of passenger service levies is run internationally. And they have an arrangement where you can reduce for specific types of things like regional versus international, but they limit how much you can reduce it by. And the traditional approach is 50%. So we can't come up with our own particular plan that says, you know, it's going to be reduced 10% for travel to CARICOM and different for different numbers. So we've got to work within the international arrangement, because that international arrangement is one of the most effective ways of raising tax revenues anywhere in the world. And then the second problem is these passenger service levies, they finance these expensive airports. These airports are very expensive. $600 million, $800 million. How are governments funding them? Through the passenger service levies. So the reason why our passenger service levies are so high is because our region is very dependent on tourists. So we have bigger airports than our countries, which means more expensive airports. And how do we fund it? The passenger service levy. So that's the constraint. We need to find ways of getting it down, but without cutting up all the revenues, and that we're working within an international system of how you tax it. So it is the plan, and we're hoping, for example, that in the reduction we're seeing here, that's like our investment in boosting regional travel. If we can see that it actually raises revenues, then it encourages to do more.
Good evening. Akil Wula, representing the Barbados Muslim Association. So we've been reassured time and again, and the government has reassured us, Barbados Muslim Association. Right? We've been reassured by the government that there will be a prayer area, a multi-faith prayer room. Yes, thank you. So there will be a multi-faith prayer room. The question is that will this cater for those who have already passed through immigration, or will it be positioned in such a way that it will facilitate for both passengers who are departing and also friends and loved ones who have come to drop them off, similarly the businessmen who are there working? How will it be, where will it be positioned? I've seen in my travels, there are certain places, for example, Piarco is quite a large one that is before departure. But then the challenges for those who have passed immigration, now there's no prayer area for them. In the larger airports, I've seen in England, I'm subject to correction here, but in England, I'm sure there are two. There's one outside, which facilitates for departing passengers, and as well as the businessmen, because we do have a lot of individuals who are there. My colleague is there in the corner, who are there for hire car purposes, taxi services, whatever the case may be. So one outside, which can be larger and facilitates for all of these individuals, and then perhaps a smaller one for the in-transit passengers and for those who have already checked in, but now they have a prayer time now comes upon them. So that's the suggestion I have this evening. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Bourne will speak to the issue of the multi-faith room.
Thanks for that, Akil. Just recently, a proposal was brought to the Board of Directors re that multi-faith facility. The initial plans was for that one to be land site, basically to the public, but your suggestion is of having something smaller on the security side for those persons who have already cleared customs and immigration, etc., is noted. Members of the board are here, so I don't think I need to take another paper back to the board. They've heard that comment.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll take one final comment. Come forward, sir. We'll take one final comment or question before we close.
Good evening. Joseph Kelman, Private Aircraft Services at the airport. How close are we to getting our own aircraft to take? We boast of a hub, but we do not have our own carrier. Are there any considerations for a carrier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, is that?
Yes. Joseph Kelman.
Kelman, sorry. Thank you very much for your comment. At this time, I can tell you, no, we don't have that as an agenda item. What we're doing, however, is that we are obviously learn more airlines to Barbados to help build our airline capacity. I cited, for example, the initiative that we've undertaken with COPA and now American adding additional flights. I must tell you that the airline business is a very expensive proposition, and the issue will become, do we have the resources to make available for the investment in aircraft? A MAX 8 aircraft, for example, you're talking probably $188 million US, right? And that's only one. And when you think about then the staffing associated with it, for a small country, can we afford it? But our strategy has been over several years, both administrations, is that we, notwithstanding we don't have a national carrier, what we've been able to do is to get additional airlift into Barbados, and that has to be the model for us to pursue at this point in time. If I were to go and to present a plan to ask for an airline to come, we'll be talking, I'm sure, upwards of maybe close to $1 billion, because you just can't have one aircraft. You must have maybe multiple aircraft in order to service a destination, because you have to factor in if there's a breakdown, then you have to talk about the staffing. So I think that the strategy that we've adopted over time has paid. You recall Barbados had a carrier known as Caribbean Airways. Caribbean Airways. And obviously because of the costs associated with that airline, that came to an end. But I think notwithstanding, there are opportunities. There are different ways now that you can structure a program in order to accomplish what you're proposing. That, of course, you have to look at very carefully. You have to make sure that the airline that you are going to partner with is an airline, obviously, because, you know, we have to manage reputational damage and all the other nuances associated with that. So to answer your simple question right now, we don't have any plans as I speak to you in respect of Barbados having its own airline.
Okay, how close are we to Category 1 status?
We are still some ways out. We are working currently putting the Civil Aviation Authority in place. We've done that. There are different components that we're now putting together. The PS spoke at length about some of the initiatives and pressing points that we have to address, including that we have all the safety components. And remember, Category 1 is obviously a state arrangement, as you probably well know. But we're working on that, and we have a defined time period in order to accomplish that objective. But we're now, once the Civil Aviation Authorities Act was proclaimed on June 1, we're now going through the staffing mechanism. We have some consultants that are working with us to help us accomplish that. And at a later date, we'll be in a better position to make an announcement. Of course, once we have those mechanisms in place, then we can obviously then have the regulatory authority coming in to make the evaluation. Having said that, I can assure you that we are working with the regulatory authorities to be build up that facility so we can be upgraded to the required category. But it will take some time, but we are pacing ahead of the schedule, and we are definitely on track to make it happen for Barbados.
One other question.
Sure.
We have been placing a lot of attention on getting people to come to Barbados. What are we really doing to keep them coming to Barbados? Because the hiring process, obviously, at the airport, we have square pegs and round holes, and therefore we are chasing people from Barbados rather than encouraging them to come. For instance, at immigration, at customs, at all of those, security, all of those, if you have the wrong persons dealing with people, then we are not going to be encouraging everybody to come back to Barbados. Because I know, I face it not daily, but regularly, where people are vowing not to come back to Barbados because of the type of treatment that they get only at the airport. I don't know if the hiring process could be changed. I don't know, but something must be done where the hiring of the correct persons to fill the correct positions.
All right, well, thank you for your comment. I don't run the Grand Islands International Airport on a day-to-day management basis, and I respond to that. But suffice to say, what I would tell you, having worked for all of my career in hospitality, what I can tell you, and certainly coming to this job, Barbados has one of the highest repeat guest factors in the Caribbean. We're very, very high, okay? There was once a view that it was in excess of 40%, but we know it's higher than that. And the reason, and if you, for example, in December and in February particularly, you will see the level of repeat guests who are coming to Barbados. So I hear you, but having taken that into consideration, you must also remember that there are people who, when they come to Barbados, they fall in love with Barbados. And that makes our job a bit easier when it comes to the marketing of the destination. And what we are finding is that as we bring new tourists, first-time visitors to the island, that they're also falling in love with the destination and they are returning. So I say all that to say, yes, there's always areas for critical improvement, and we know that is improvement. For example, what we're doing with the capital works program that will be undertaken at the airport. There's always improvement that we have to undertake in terms of training all the workers who are in hospitality. Not only the airport, We have to talk about retraining in the hotels. We have to talk about retraining attractions, and an ongoing continuous training is what we have to do. As we go to new markets, as I've explained, we're going into the Gulf, we go into Latin America. That will not only bring language training, but it also has to bring a little bit of the culture and the training on culture and how we respond to tourists who come in these from the various cultures. So it is an ongoing process. We will continue to improve. The good thing for us is that we're benchmarking our performance. We're seeing where the numbers are going, and we have obviously visitors exit surveys that we're doing. We've changed that. At our last management meeting, I've asked for that to be changed up. And on top of that, what I've also asked is for the Barbadian views on tourism to be captured in a survey so that we will, understand the thinking of Barbadians, and we are going to very shortly have a firm that's known in Barbados for capturing data and presenting data to us so that we can evaluate it. You know, oftentimes as a planner, you just can't sit back and believe you have all the ideas, and certainly that's not my leadership style. What you have to do, you have to listen, and you have to get the views of the people within the community and all the persons who work within the sector. So we're doing that, and again, to benchmark. The other issue that we're focusing on in terms of product development, we have to improve our accommodation product. What I can tell you is that we have within the accommodation sector, we have predominant areas of you call the Airbnb or the Vrbo and all those that are associated with accommodation, competing with the traditional hotels. You also have the villas who are competing. And as you probably well know, a lot of infrastructure offerings is based not only on how you modernize your infrastructure, but it's also how you present your product. And that is an area where we are focusing on. We're getting ready very shortly to undertake a stability test of the hospitality sector in Barbados to see how it's performing vis-a-vis our competitors and where we can do it. We're also going to do a similar thing for attractions. We have had attractions on the island for as long as we've built out our tourism sector. But beyond that, what we have to do is to start looking to see how best can we make it more competitive, how can we make it more attractive to the tourists who will visit here, and how, more importantly, how do we retain tourist spend on the island in the most fundamental way? Because you know, you can play the numbers game. We can drive the numbers up. I can take the numbers up beyond 2019, but we also have to make sure the spend is going the right direction. And when you look at it on surface, even though we've not gone to 2019 levels, when you look at the spend is going in the right direction. I won't go into too much details about that, but we can play both ways. You know, it's like in a hotel. You can go for RevPAR, revenue per available room, or you can go for the average daily rate, which is ADR. So you can play out. But at the end of the day, the most important one, based on my training, my experience, is RevPAR, revenue per available room. That's king, and that's how you manage it. So there are a number of initiatives that we are putting in place to obviously build out the hospitality sector in general. So tourism is not only going to be about airlift, it has to be about spend. It has to be about getting new airlift and retaining airlift. And one of the things when I joined the ministry we had to do is to protect and defend airlift into Barbados, particularly at the time when you recall what was happening at Heathrow. They were canceling flights, and we were just in London recently, spoke to GAIA and other partners, and that's the one thing that shows. When other international destinations, flights were being canceled from those destinations like LA and so on, British Airways, using British Airways as an example, protected the route into Barbados. But they went beyond that as well. The quality of the aircraft. Now you have front-facing seats versus what I call the love seats. And then you have, for example, in the winter, right? We have bigger aircraft coming here, the 777-300, which have, you know, the what you call a larger cabin, premium cabin spaces available for persons to travel who want to travel on the luxurious end. So those are some of the examples that we're doing. And for example, with BA, there's no other destination within the Caribbean that will have the number of flights that we have per week and driving the volumes that they're driving into Barbados. And that's exceptional. So it is a plan that we have. And again, everything has to dovetail around what we're doing at the airport in order to build out our infrastructure. And and I'm telling you, I'm very confident, when you see the infrastructure going in the direction as planned, believe you me, you will start to see the incremental benefits that will be associated with that planned investment. Not sure if I've answered your question in detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We did say that was the final comment, and we recognize that we have, yes, we have two more people. We are going to take the final two questions at this time, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, good night. My name is Abdullah Collector. The bench in the arrival area has been removed since 2019. This is an inconvenience, especially for the elderly who come to collect families and friends in the arrival hall. Outside the arrival hall.
Sorry.
The benches in the arrival hall outside has been removed since 2019 during COVID. And this is an inconvenience, especially for the elderly who come to collect the family and friends.
Okay, to answer you, the short question is yes, they were removed in 2020, I'm told. I've taken the cue from the CEO of the company who's indicated to me that they are going to be restored. I know there were also issues in the departures hall as well in respect of maybe some facilities, but yes, it will be handled.
Also, I go to the airport on a daily basis because I operate a car rental business, and the water cooler in the arrival hall for the last month or more, on a daily basis when I go, is not working. I've made numerous complaints, and that water cooler in the arrival hall in the washroom area is not functioning over a month.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. Obviously, the CEO is here. I don't meddle in day-to-day operations, but I think, like me, and he's heard it from you, so he will attend to that issue.
And also, like operating a car rental business, ATM machine is very vital in the arrival hall, because the only ATM machine in the airport is the one in the departure hall. And up to this Saturday, I had a guest from the UK, and they was taking a taxi to go to the hotel and then collect the car. And the taxi guy said we won't be taking any card. And he had to walk from the arrival hall into the departures just to take out cash. So I think it's something that an ATM machine should be installed outside in the arrival hall outside.
You want me to speak to that?
I'll let the CEO speak to that, and it can be as well.
Hi, Abdul, and thanks for the question. What I will say, those benches, and Charlene is here, this is a task I have challenged her with. The benches were removed, I think, when we had what we used to call it the COVID monitors. But since putting them in storage, a lot of them have deteriorated, so we're actually looking for a replacement that'd be adequate for the passengers. I'm going to look into that matter as it relates to the water cooler. The director of operations is here, so I'm sure he's taking notes on that. And as it relates to the ATM facilities, I think in recent weeks we've had some discussions with banks in relation to setting up ATMs and other Cambio facilities. I will say that during the COVID period, literally no financial institution wanted anything to do with the airport. But now that they're seeing a level of recovery, I'm saying we've had some meaningful discussions with some partners within the last 2 to 3 weeks, and hopefully we've outlined a strategy for ATMs, not only on the departure side, but also on the arrival side, because we also have a high volume of staff that also utilize and also looking at foreign exchange, etc. So we've had those discussions, and hopefully sometime soon we'll be able to make an announcement as to where we go with that.
And lastly, as in the departure area, as you enter the airport, the 2 lanes, the one that the taxi or the hire cars will go straight, and the outer lane, first for the normal public. When you go and drop off anybody at the airport in the departure area, the engineering department have a spot for themselves, the security department and the airport bus staff. During the winter season when it starts, and 6 and 7 aircrafts on the ground, and you go and drop off someone at the airport, there's only 3 spots that you could use at one time. And then you got engineering vehicle, security, and a bus. I think during the winter season, something should be done. That whole stretch, that 6 or 7 cars can pull up on the side and drop off their loved ones and proceed.
But we can't, and even though I take some of your points, the reason why you have security vehicles in place is for tactical operations, okay? And any airport facility, don't care where you go. I just came out of a state, and you have police police officers.
Police.
Hold on, you have police. But all I'm making the point to you is that there's a reason why you will have a security vehicle. The police officers, yes, will park. They will also patrol. But there are other things that you don't know behind the scene that obviously airport security must be involved in, and we can't divulge it, and we'll never divulge it because it's part of national security. But don't think because you see a airport security vehicle park that is lying idle, you must have sometimes tactics in place to do what you have to do to protect. And a lot of things, for example, that you don't know behind the scenes. But the other thing I think you came in late, we were talking about when we had our session on August the 9th with the concessionaires, the issue of another exit for the Grand Adams International Airport was discussed, and it was also reiterated in this tonight's views that we were capturing. So suffice to say, yes, we have taken that into consideration. The issue of exit lanes and the entrances to the airport, we're relooking, and that's part of the capital expenditure program to be undertaken. But you must bear with us as well that there must be at some times security, both the Barbados Police Service as well as the airport security for tactical reasons. Okay, so I hope you understand the point I'm making.
Okay, thank you.
You.
Thank you. We go on to our final question for the evening, for the night.
Good night. My name is Caroline Scott. So I realize that we're stressing the point of infrastructure, but what I would like to know is when it comes to the surrounding residences, are they going to be displaced by the improvements in the infrastructure? Also, how much of the land, providing that the airport already has its own, I don't know the right word.
Footprint.
Space.
Footprint.
Footprint. How much more will be used up to improve the infrastructure?
Well, I can answer you right away and tell you that there's no plan to displace residences along the airport. The airport has real estate within its footprint, and we are developing the real estate that falls within the footprint. If the government of Barbados, certainly through GAIA, would like to have further expansion down the road, of course, that we have to take into consideration all the planning requirements. We will have to facilitate, similar to what you're doing here at Town Hall meeting. We would have to do all the studies, the impact and the socio and other studies before you do that. But right now, as we speak, this plan does not involve the acquisition of additional lands outside of those that are owned by the airport, and those lands will be developed in any redevelopment program for Grand Adams International Airport. And that is squarely within the footprint of the real estate portfolio of the Grand Adams International Airport. So no need to worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
And there's enough space as well, to the point that we talked about earlier, on the physical compound of the airport to facilitate expansion for maintenance. You see the parking apron that they did, I think you said it was on the south, and the like. Obviously, in respect of the road realignment, that could have consequences for the existing, what we call visitor car parking allocation or space lots that we have there. But there are other opportunities that we can use to build out or make provision for any additional loss of parking spaces, and that's again within the footprint of the Grand Adams International Airport.
Okay.
I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. This has been a very insightful session, a very useful discussion, and we thank you for your participation. At this time, I'd like to invite the panel. If you have any closing remarks, we'll leave the final word for the minister.
I would just like to express my gratitude to you all for coming this evening, taking up your time, asking genuine questions, genuine concerns and issues. My gratitude for your encouragement and understanding that we do need $300 million of investment in our airport, that we need to lift our game and raise our standards in a changing world. My gratitude that you appreciate that we need to balance things. We need to balance financial return with customer satisfaction, with high engineering standards. It's a balance. And all I can say in return for my gratitude is that we're committed to continued dialogue. I mean, one of the things I've learned in returning to Barbados is that the more you speak, sometimes it's painful to expose yourself to any question possible, but I've never left that experience without learning something and without understanding something. And I think that Barbadians love the dialogue and that take it very responsibly, and we move forward together. And I think I want to thank you for that.
Okay, the PS is deferred to me as did Hadley. So let me also thank all of you for attending this town hall meeting. Let me also thank the persons who are viewing online. I'm told in excess of 240 persons online. I really want to say, if there's one thing I've learned since coming to public life, is that, and I learned this when I returned to the Transport Board as chairman, you must always talk the country through changes. And this is but an example of talking the country through major changes. As I indicated, the ministerial statement was approximately 50 minutes long. It was detailed. The sessions that we've had with the unions, the sessions we've had with the concessionaires, and the sessions that management held with the staff. It was very patient, but I felt it was absolutely necessary. And as we continue to update you on the process, we will continue to talk you through the issues of the Grant Williams International Airport in respect of this PPP arrangement. The other issue for us is that the investment will be a major boost, not only for jobs in construction and post-construction. Post-construction as it relates to building out additional retail and modernizing retail spaces. But the one thing that this transaction will do for us, it will create a wonderful value proposition for the Grant Williams International Airport. $300 million in works in the airport. When you do not have an attachment to the Grant Williams International Airport real estate, says a lot. And on the face of it, $300 million in investment could yield maybe a value consideration, maybe double that, or maybe $600 million. I like to look at it as a wonderful proposition for the country. It is the cost. The taxpayers don't have to carry the costs. We don't have to increase taxes in order to get to the point where we want to get to in terms of modernizing our airport. All we're simply doing is entering a transaction, and based on that transaction, we'll be able to improve not only the quality of service at the airport, we're not improving our product offering, we're not only repositioning our Grant Williams International Airport as a major hub now for the Eastern Caribbean, along with the other initiatives that we're going with pre-clearance and all the other initiatives in order to build out the Barbados Grant Williams International Airport as a major hub for the Eastern Caribbean. I want to thank you for your patience. I think you've heard enough about the strategy, how the airport expansion will dovetail with tourism, renewed product investment, how it would dovetail with airlift, what we're doing on the civil aviation part to build out the facility. And there's not much more that I think I would like to say, except to say that I was also heartened by the quality of the contributions from the floor. I also am very grateful that the meeting was conducted in a very respectful way, and there was really no animosity, but that the ideas and suggestions put forth, be it from the whole architecture, the whole layout of the airport, to the issues associated with the taxi operators and what they have to go through on a daily basis, that those were presented in a very mature way. And that those presentations that we took today, and we obviously have it on record and the notes. You saw me scribbling a few bits and pieces, so Harley knows where my mind is going. When he comes to management meeting, that I'll be asking him, where are you on these things? And the benefit of having an iPad is that you can transfer the notes to the iPad and challenge them at a management meeting. So he knows that he has his work cut out. But having said that, I really also want to thank all the persons who were involved this afternoon in organizing the town hall meeting. I only flew into Barbados yesterday, and PS has me on a plane again tomorrow. I was on vacation, though, for a couple of days, but back out tomorrow. But I really want to thank each and every one of you who made this happen, including the staff at the Grand Adams International Airport who worked on this and did all the necessary publicity to get out there, and of course the staff associated here at the Barbados Conference Services Limited. I want to thank Professor Avinash and other members of the board who are present today and members of the negotiating team for all the hard work that they're doing in respect of championing this wonderful project for Barbados. There's no project, no major project in Barbados that doesn't come a little bit of controversy, but I think we've not gone through too much, if I may add. But I think that the benefits will definitely be worth the sacrifice made on the part of the negotiating team, members of the board, members of the staff. I particularly want to thank the CEO of the Grand Adams International Airport, because he's had a lot to do with spearheading this initiative, as well as Ms. Gail Yearwood, who's also the project manager, who's been working tirelessly on this project. And of course, I can close without thanking my permanent secretary. It's obviously always a pleasure to have a great permanent secretary, and I categorize her as a great permanent secretary. I'm not flattering her because she knows that, and I work her overtime even when we are running to catch planes to get back to Barbados or go to other destinations, and you can hear her laughing because it's a lot of work. And the one thing coming to this ministry, even though I like a lot of canvassing, it's a lot of traveling involved, but we're doing it for the right reasons. And I want to assure you that every trip we always look at what is the value creation and proposition for Barbados. And in that vein, I want to thank each and every one of you. Again, thank the online viewers. I think we had approximately over 240 at any one given time. And I really want to thank those who shared and asked questions online. We were able to respond to them. And I give you our commitment as a ministry that we will continue to listen to you. We'll continue, if required, to have major sessions. And of course, when Professor Prasad comes back and his negotiating team, they get back to us in respect of the next steps, then we will message it, and we will certainly keep you informed as to what we're doing. I hope that they pull off the negotiations, because the country needs it, and that we can get that concessionaire agreement wrapped up. And there are also some homework that we have to do coming out of the August 9th session with the contractual arrangements, and I have to take a paper to cabinet on that. That was something I know that we had discussed, so the CEO was very diligent. He submitted the information. I will deal with that. And then coming out of the union meetings, obviously concerns was raised. As I said, we are working with the proposed entity to make sure we satisfy those arrangements. So we're trying to capture everything that has been said, and once we have the heads of terms of the agreement out of the way, we now move to the concession agreement. So all that's left for us is to say thank you very much. I didn't know that we would have all stayed here until 20 minutes after 9 in the PM, but I really want to thank you once again for the good spirit and for the good dialogue that we've had today. Thank you, and have a great evening. Good night.